Welcome back to the Daily Wrap. It's potluck time, but first, the last conversation was so compelling that I'd like to give another minute and a half so everybody could get their final points in. First question, this is going to be a lightning round, all right? What is the proper level for a minimum wage in terms of dollars?
I think it's what the market demands. And with this in Seattle, you've got 36% of restaurants revenue coming to employment. You've got 30% going to, I think, rent and other expenses, and then 30% going to food. So they're really only getting a 4% profit margin. I think that $15 thing is really going to push them out of the limits. And I think we know there's a correlation. You know, you raise minimum wage, that's got to come out of somewhere. It's going to result in higher prices, lower employment.
Heather.
I would say I agree with Jillian in the fact that you saw Walmart raise theirs on their own to $9 and it's going to go to $10 next year. I think that the fast food places are looking to iPads instead of cashiers and automated burger flippers instead of people, and that's what you're going to see as you continue to raise the minimum wage.
Great point. I actually saw a story today that robots can replace half of American workers by 2027.
There's no question about it, but that's not because of the minimum wage. But my point is simple. We look at the numbers of restaurant closings in Seattle last February. We look at the number this February. The restaurant business is better off this February than they were last February. They're not closing at the same rate. If this is such a big threat, why aren't more of them closing up? And how do we know it's this big threat when it hasn't happened yet? It's that simple.
Will it be a big issue in the 2016 campaign?
No.
No.
Seattle?
No, not Seattle. I'm just saying minimum wage in general.
I think it's income inequality. I think
The
I
bigger
think that's
picture.
right.
Bigger
It's
picture.
a bigger picture. I agree with that.
Okay, very good. And now it's time for Potluck. This is the part of the show where we go around the table and share our favorite stories of the day. Heather Hansen, we talking minimum wage or something else?
I will talk quickly. The new FEMA guidelines are going to could make it difficult for some governors to get some of the funds that they're looking for, because now their risk management assessment has to include language that refers to climate change. And for those governors like Chris Christie and Jindal, who do not believe in climate change and may not want to include that type of language in their risk assessments, are not perhaps going to be able to get the money. It seems to me to be a little bit of extortion, where this is not something, it doesn't matter what caused the flood. If you're preparing for a flood, why do you have to say a flood caused by climate change instead of just simply saying we're preparing for a flood? It really seems to me that it infringes on First Amendment, it seems extortion, it seems unnecessary, and it seems yet another reason that these climate change issues, again, get away from the true issue and it just becomes political.
For anybody who watches House of Cards, I found it interesting that President Frank Underwood took money from FEMA to fund a jobs program because he said it was a national crisis. Right.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll see that, correct?
No, I would hope not. But you know what? This is a slippery slope, and to start pressuring people to say things that they don't believe in order to get federal money for their constituents for things like floods, it is really, really a stretch, and I think it's a problem.
We're going through an amazing streak right now of no major hurricanes hitting the U.S. mainland after we heard that climate change was going to create all these superstorms. So hopefully I just didn't jinx it.
Right.
And it's probably going to start snowing in the second year anyway. So
Yeah, we've had it.
Who are we kidding? Anyway, Jillian, you are up next.
I am. So I want to talk a bit about the Department of Interior's new fracking regulations. And I think one of the unintended consequences of them is going to really hurt Native Americans. Let me explain why. Okay. So these regulations apply not only to federal lands, but also to tribal lands. And tribal lands have an outsized share of natural resources, energy resources, but they're already really underdeveloped. And that's because, in contrast to state and private lands, 4 federal agencies oversee them. You've got 49 steps that you've got to go through. By singling out tribal lands and saying that they're subject to these new regulations, it's going to really hurt a population where you've already got extremely high unemployment, extremely high poverty levels, and very low high school graduation. And I think that's just reprehensible.
Rick, you're a pragmatic liberal.
It's interesting, and I'm actually a supporter of fracking. My take on the regulations is they must be doing something right. I base that on the fact that the day they came out, I got calls from the environmentalists complaining, and I got calls from the industry complaining. So if nobody was happy, that's usually a sure sign they're getting something right. You have to remember that these only apply to federal lands
And tribal
and tribal lands.
tribal
That's right.
lands.
But they may well be adopted by the states. They typically are. You have an interesting point.
I think that's exactly what it's setting out to
I don't
do,
think
is
the
set a
regulations,
national standard.
Yeah, I don't think that they were that burdensome
Well, they weren't.
But
But I
it's
think
fair for
what
you
it
to be
is
concerned.
dangerous to do is set a federal standard for fracking. Because if you look at it, states have actually done an extremely good job regulating
have.
it. Most of them have.
Yeah,
Most
no.
of them have, and most of them are already doing what the federal government proposes in these plans. But I think, adding that extra bureaucracy, and particularly for Native Americans, not letting them manage their own land is pretty insulting.
Yeah, I get that point.
We allow them to have
I'm
casinos.
all for local control of it, state and local control.
So who would
State
control though for those lands?
I would hope the tribal councils are. I don't know a lot about how that is managed, but I think it's kind of their right to decide whether or not to frack and how to monitor that, because they're the ones that are going to be the most
What
impacted
if it
by
has an impact on other people outside of the reservation when it comes to water
Well,
or
I
whatever?
mean, states are looking at that too, so I think that would potentially be a legal issue. But
the
states are
don't
doing.
have control over them.
I know what I have control
You know
over
what
this
I'm
segment, and we have to take a
problem.
break here. So, when we come back, we'll have even more potluck for you, including my own. This is the Daily Wrap, as you know, and it's only on Newsmax TV. And welcome back to Daily Wrap. I'm Joe Concha. If you're just joining us, we're in the middle of our potluck, where we're sharing our favorite stories of the day. And I am up. Cell phones getting an F in school. Read some stories today about widespread cheating in America's high schools today by, get this, Twitter, for starters. Kids actually on their cell phones sending tweets back and forth to each other, or text back and forth to each other, or just having answers altogether on their phones. And it got me thinking, why are students even allowed to have cell phones in a classroom in the first place? Now, there is a safety concern, I get that, particularly after Columbine in 1999, where a lot of students were using even cell phones then, and it wasn't quite as popular. To obviously call for help in 911. So there's always that, well, they should have it just in case, but the teacher could very easily just pick up the phone and call 911, no question. And it made me think back to when I was in school and the way I used to see people cheat, and even when I was in adult school one time. Check out how this guy tried to pull off cheating on a test. What does KGB stand for? That was from Spies Like Us, actually, admittedly. I believe a 1985 movie, Chevy Chase, Dan Aykroyd, a classic, probably one of the most underrated ever. But that's how you used to have to cheat. And now, hey, just bring your cell phone to class, and if the teacher's not looking, plenty of information you could put on one of these little screens right here, no question. So that is basically my potluck, everybody. Should cell phones be allowed in high school classes? Yay or nay? Jillian.
I'll say yay. I'll be the contrarian. I think, it's sometimes used for cheating, but it's a matter of convenience. You can use it as a calculator. You can use it to stay in touch. Probably helps with studying. I'm all for it.
A calculator. What's the point of even taking algebra?
I think take it away for tests. They can have it at school, take it away for tests.
Agreed.
After my whatever we pay people in Seattle crisis, you and I are agreeing on everything.
I know.
I agree, yay. I mean, it's a fact of life, cell phones. It's not going anywhere.
Okay, I say yay, and this isn't yay or nay, but what the hell? I mean, we're
It is
voting
now.
on this. I say yeah, bring the cell phone in, and when you walk into the class, where that basket used to be where you gave your teacher apples, right there, and then you take it when you leave.
You're
It's
still
pretty
giving
simple.
apples.
What's that?
Still
Still
giving
giving apples.
See,
right.
that's right. You're giving her an apple.
That's a very good point. I'm giving you the floor.
I thought you were going to give me something else there when you went. In this week's Irony is a Wonderful Thing department, you know how we have red states, we have blue states. Blue states apparently think that we should be taxing everybody to the max. Red states don't particularly care for federal income taxes. Well, look, money that we all pay in federal taxes in a large respect ends up going back to these states. But of course, red states, because they oppose taxes, or federal taxes anyhow, would certainly be getting less of that money than the blue states, right? Blue states must be getting a lot more money. Otherwise, why would they be so into taxes? Wrong. Study out, and let's put up that graphic. Take a look at this. Blue states are less dependent on the federal government than red states. In fact, I just took the top four and the bottom four, the four least dependent states in this country are New Jersey, Delaware, Illinois, and Minnesota, for most dependent states: New Mexico, Mississippi, Kentucky, Alabama. As you can see, the top 4 are typically identified as blue states, the bottom 4 as red states. So what's the deal with that? If these people in the red states are so opposed to paying federal taxes, why are they taking more of my money than I get coming back to my state? Anybody got an answer?
I'm just going to toss 2 things out, and I'd love an answer on this. First of all, is this looking at the ratio between state and federal funding?
Oh, you mean how much comes into the state? No, it's looking at the amount of money it's paid to the feds and comes back to the state.
And does it factor in population?
I don't know if it does or
It
not.
does not.
Because I think those are 2 things that could really skew the study
Right,
and skew
okay.
your point.
And
All
age.
right.
Age is another
But
thing
actually,
that could,
I don't know, because New Jersey
Yeah,
has a
age
much
too.
wait. New Jersey, it doesn't make a lot of sense. New Mexico, which was the worst,
Right.
right, you would think they'd have a much bigger population if that's the case. And yet they're one of the smallest populated states in the country, so I'm not sure population does figure
age
in.
is going to be a big factor, though, and we don't know the age. I read the study after you sent it this morning,
Yeah.
because if you're getting Medicare and Medicaid, and
Yeah,
Social Security, that would be a
you think
huge
there's
part.
more old people in Kentucky, Mississippi, and Alabama than in New Jersey?
Well, I think you need to know, and
Yeah, I
also
think
you
it's a
know that
fascinating
those are the
study, but-
poorest.
Yes, there
those
are. They all leave New Jersey.
Yeah.
Florida.
I don't think they do. For
It's all
Florida,
tricky.
yes,
It's
but
all
Florida is. Thank you. If your assessment is right, how can Florida not be on that list, and yet they're
Poverty-
not?
I mean, poverty is a big part of it too. You're talking about some of the top 5
whatever
poorest
it is,
states.
whatever it is, those people are in those states, and they're red
They're
states
reaping the
getting
benefits.
more of the money. You can explain it any way that's comfortable to you, but it doesn't change
I
the
think-
fact
I
that
think it's
they're
a
getting
fascinating-
all the
I-
We
money.
gotta go. Either way, Rick has become the Ross Perot of the Daily Wrap. Put up that shot. Anyway, when we come back, it's time for Yay or Nay. This is the Daily Wrap, full of graphics, only on Newsmax TV.